SeatGeek is the easiest way to find the best deals on tickets to pretty much any live event. Concerts, sports, theater, comedy, whatever you want. Download the SeatGeek app today and enter promo code SEATS to save $20 on your first purchase.
Welcome back to the Sports Beat KC podcast. This is Jesse Newell, KU beat reporter for the Kansas City Star. I'm joined once again this week by CJ Moore of the Athletic and Bleacher Report. CJ, how you doing this week?
Jess is doing well. What's going on, brother?
Not too much is going on. I know you are in the car once again. This is some of our best podcast content, is you driving away in a car on the speakerphone. So I feel good about that. But it's also a week where we have to talk some KU hoops because it's just different in Lawrence right now. You know, KU has now lost 2 of its last 3 home games. KU fell to Texas Tech earlier this week, so it's time to talk some KU hoops and how concerned fans should be, how concerned fans are about this particular team. So I know that you were at the game on Tuesday when KU fell to Texas Tech. First impressions right now, I guess, what do you think the panic level should be at this point for KU basketball?
Panic level on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not concerned at all, 10 being NIT is coming. Probably like a, I don't know, 6, 7 maybe even. I mean, it should be some panic. If like you're really, really concerned about the streak and that matters a lot to you, which I think it does to a lot of Kansas fans, like it's really early to say it's in jeopardy, but I think we have enough to kind of go off of to like say, yeah, you should probably start to be worried about it. And I know that this team could look different in a couple weeks because of, you know, the potential of adding both can we get a pronunciation on this? Is it De Sousa? Because I thought I saw the other day he said it's De Sosa.
Yeah, like Sammy Sosa. De Sosa. Sammy Sosa.
De Sosa. Yeah, like Sammy Sosa. That's what I. All right, so De Sosa. Got to say that 10 times to get it through my head. I know Billy Preston, De Sosa, could be joining the team pretty soon. But you tell me, Jesse, I don't know that it will really change the complexion of who this team is that much because I still feel like they're going to play small a lot. I still feel like they're going to be really, really dependent on the 3. And I don't know how much those guys can really change things. At least on the offensive end, maybe defensively a little bit, but on the offensive end, I don't know that the complexion of how this team goes about its business will really change that much. What do you think?
Yeah, you actually basically set it up on T for me because I wrote today about what would happen if Billy Preston and Sylvia DeSosa become eligible for this team and where it might help them. And I never expected to write this, but I basically wrote exactly what you just said, which is I think KU needs Billy Preston not for his offense, but for his defense. And that's a weird statement to make about a McDonald's All-American who's a pick-and-pop guy, always known for his great shooting ability, his scoring ability, all those sorts of things. But, you know, Bill Self went on and on Thursday about his team finding an identity. And there's been times like this in the past where KU has had similar issues. Bill Self talks about this a lot, and it's obvious at this point this team doesn't grind like his normal teams do. His teams don't buckle down in the last few minutes like other teams have at Allen Fieldhouse because this team already has 2 home losses, and it looks like a third, maybe a fourth could be likely down the line. But I think for KU defensively, what they've done so well in the past, if you think about Bill Self and what his preference is defensively, it's to force one bad shot and get the rebound every time. Force one bad shot, get the rebound every time. What is KU missing right now when it can, you know, potentially have that sort of defensive identity? Well, you know, they've been struggling with defensive and stopping drives a little bit, but, you know, that can be fixed a little bit. You can do a little bit better. You can play Marcus Garrett a little bit more, those sorts of things. That's not really the issue. Texas and Texas Tech didn't shoot that well against Kansas, so the first shot defense wasn't horrible. But where KU is just getting roasted right now is it can't get the rebound. And so if Billy Preston comes back, KU might be able to play a little bit more extensive zone, that 2-3 zone. And then the biggest problem has been getting the rebound. Okay, you force a bad shot. Now you get the rebound because Billy Preston can do that for you. Or you play your man defense. You play a little bit better, a little bit more fundamentally sound, maybe a little bit better scouting report defense, guys taking more pride in that. and then Billy Preston gets the rebound for you, or he takes a little bit of pressure off of Udoka Azubuike. So to me, it is uncertain with the future, and it is a little bit of a fuzzy gaze into the future. And we're talking right now as of 11:57 on Friday. By the time this comes out, Billy Preston, maybe he'll be cleared, maybe Sylvia will be cleared. We don't know that right now, but that gaze into the future, saying, hey, KU's defense could get better with those two guys, is probably the most likely path moving forward, which is KU gets those guys, one or both of them, and then is allowed to play bigger at least a few minutes, and that should help the defense just because Billy Preston is a rebounder that this team needs right now.
And what's funny is I think they do have an identity. I just don't think it's an identity that Bill Self likes. Right? Like, they're a team that's going to be dependent on threes because that's how they're built. Like, that's what their strength is. They've got shooters. That's their identity. Now, defensively, I guess you could say they don't really have an identity, but it's like you said, that the goal is to force tough twos. And I think a lot of this comes down to what you're talking about is not having a great rebounder there. And I know you've written about it, but I think it's becoming clear as the games go on that Udoka Azubuike just isn't a natural great rebounder. And you look, the best KU defensive teams have a rim protector, and that rim protector almost allows them, and I want you to do something real quick, Jesse, since I'm driving. Go to Bill Self's KenPom page, okay?
Got it.
While I'm making this point. Will you do that? All right. So the best Bill Self defenses, they have a rim protector, and because they have that rim protector, it allows their guards to pressure up more on the perimeter, to maybe take a few more chances, to guard their guy tight, and maybe not be super, super worried about, being able to, like, funnel a guy to the shot blocker. So you can pressure out, and you always want to keep your guy in front of you, but if you have to, you can kind of funnel them to the shot blocker. And so the years where KU's had good rim protection is probably the years where they've forced the most turnovers. So I'm going to guess that the 6, 7, 8 teams, all the teams that had Chalmers, but they had Sasha Khan back there, who wasn't a great shot blocker, but he was a good rim protector, if that makes any sense. And then the teams that Cole factored into, so 2009 and 2010, and then the teams that Jeff Withey was a factor, so his last 2 years, 2012 and 2013. If I had to guess, I would say the years that KU's created the most turnovers, and I haven't looked this up, so I could be totally wrong, would be all those years I just listed. Is that correct?
Sort of, almost correct. You are absolutely right. The best turnover teams KU has ever had were 6, 7, and 8. And again, I think a lot of that goes back to Mario Chalmers. Some of those other teams you mentioned were not as good. 9 and 10. 10 was okay. 9 was 255th. And then you talked about Withey's years. 12 and 13, they ranked 160th in turnover percentage and 265th. And again, I think this kind of speaks to my point, which is we've seen this a lot with Bill Self defenses where early in the season, when they're fresh, when they're really getting after teams, they play up the floor and they get steals, and it's like, okay, this can be their defensive identity. They can get after people. But it seems like over time that always kind of goes back to the default Bill Self setting, which is just play sound defensively. Don't gamble. Get contested shots, that sort of thing.
He's a risk-averse defensive coach.
Exactly. And so while I thought, again, I kind of got fooled earlier in the year again, this team was getting after people. Devontae Graham was getting steals. Marcus Garrett was getting steals. Even Svi Mykhailiuk was getting steals, all those sorts of things. It just seems like the most likely path forward is what the path has been so many other years, which is going back to risk-averse. But again, that whole formula falls apart if you can't rebound. And so for this team, maybe the most likely path, the most likely thing that could help them is you get a guy like Billy Preston, who I mentioned this in the article, but when I talked to Eric Bossi from Rivals.com, the Rivals national recruiting analyst, when I first talked to him about KU getting Billy Preston, said, what is his greatest strength? The first words he said were he can be an elite rebounder. And so if you're Kansas and you hear that, it's just like, okay, two things are wrong now, for Kansas. They can't get turnovers and they can't get rebounds. Well, can Billy Preston fix one of those things, and then can Bill Self go back to what he's always been comfortable with and fix this defense that has been broken the last two games? that seems like something I can envision. That seems like something I can understand. And so it all is dependent on, of course, KU getting good news from the NCAA. But if that happens, then all of a sudden the worries that you might have about this KU defense, like how can it happen? How can it work with these pieces? You say, okay, you add this one piece, and maybe that's a much more likely scenario that KU can get better in a hurry just because of the skill set that Billy Preston can provide.
Two things. One, Bill Self does have that track record that if anybody can fix this defense, you should have a little faith that he's going to figure some things out, and getting those pieces is definitely going to help. And I was thinking about this last night where, Azubuike hasn't been I don't think his shot blocking and rim protection has been as good as you would have hoped.
It's half of
and as you would have thought.
Yeah, to interrupt you real quick, CJ, it's half of last year. Now, we know he played, not Big 12 competition last year, but for his block rate to go from 12% to basically 6% in the course of a year is something I think was unexpected.
And one thing that I think he's struggling with is as a guy who's, a shot blocker, you have to figure out when to go after him and when not to, right? When to just kind of take almost like you are and then worry about getting the rebound. Because it's almost have to be a head game for him right now, because if he sells himself out and goes for the block and misses it, there's not Thomas Robinson back there to get the block or to get the rebound. Like with Whitby, he could almost, he always had that security blanket of, okay, Thomas Robinson's behind me, and he's going to get the rebound every time. And Robinson could be like, all right, I don't have to worry about blocking shots because just going to go do that, and I'm just going to rebound. And then same thing the next year with Kevin Young. I think Kevin Young's defensive rebounding rate was pretty good, right?
Yeah, it was. I'll go back to the numbers for sure.
I'm pretty sure it was pretty good. So, he also had that. They don't have that guy like behind Azubuike to be like, okay, if he doesn't get the block, so-and-so is going to get the rebound. And so that's, I don't know if this mental stuff is going through his head or not, but it could be just by, he might not be thinking about it in that kind of complex way, but I think that's a little bit what's at play here, that, not only does he have to try to be the rim protector for this team, but he's also got to try to be the rebounder, and he's just not very good at the rebounding part of it, and it's become where he's just not doing either thing very well.
I would agree, and you're right. The complement and the way the pieces have fit for KU in past years kind of maybe was underrated a little bit. That, like you said, for every Withy, there was a Kevin Young or a Thomas Robinson, or even last year, for every Josh Jackson, who maybe was playing small ball at the 4, there was a Landon Lucas who was soaking up everything. And, to be fair to Udoka, his rebounding numbers aren't horrible if you look at a percentage basis, but they're not what they need to be. When
somebody's got to get them.
Yeah, somebody's got to get him. Well, and I mean, he's not getting much help. Let's be honest. Whoever's playing that small ball 4 spot for KU is not getting the type of rebounds. If you look at the numbers, Malik Newman's basically the second best rebounder when he's been in, defensive rebounding wise. So, Svi Mykhailiuk, that's just not his game. That's just not what he does. You know what I mean? Like he's a tall guy and a tall guard, but that's not who he is. And the same thing goes for LaGerald Vick and certain stretches where you would think he'd be athletic enough to go get him, but watching back some of the film, I don't know what was going on with him in the Texas Tech game, but he just looked out of it. I mean, just disinterested, not boxing out, not into it. I don't really know, but like KU desperately needs one of those guys to take on that role. I wanted to bring this up with you, CJ, to see what you thought, because I was kind of talking about this yesterday with somebody, and I don't know if I'm going too far with this, and maybe this can be something that's developed over time, but it sounds weird to say this, but I wonder if KU needs, like, if you think back in time, KU has always had talented players, and they've always gotten talented players to fit into whatever role Bill Self needs them to fit into. At the same time, it seems like there's always 1 to 2 guys every single year that aren't the most talented, that aren't future NBA pros, that kind of just slide into a role that KU needs for them. They're super unselfish. They do whatever is needed to kind of fill in those gaps that we're talking about. And
Kevin Young, Brady Morningstar,
listen,
those kinds of guys.
Landon Lucas. I mean, you go down the line. I was kind of thinking about this. I mean, I know fans have been frustrated with Malik Newman, and I think personally that he's trying to be unselfish. He's trying to do the right things, but this guy has been a guy that shot the ball all the time when he's growing up. Like, he's been the go-to guy offensively. He's trying to fit into a team that doesn't need him to do that. Like, it's almost like KU needs him to be Tyrell Reed. You know what I'm saying? Like a lockdown defender, a guy who makes open threes, a guy who can do those sort of small things for Kansas and then kind of be just a fill-in-the-blank sort of guy for KU while not taking on that huge role. But he's Malik Newman. You know what I mean? Like he was known as one of the top scorers and the top wings coming out, or shooting guards coming out of high school, and a future NBA guy. So I don't know. I mean, Mitch Lightfoot fits that mold, but he can't do it because he's a 4 playing the 5 and is kind of forced into a bad role for Kansas. It's almost though like they're a Brady Morningstar short right now. They're a Tyrell Reed short. They're a Landon Lucas short, where they have a bunch of top-level talented guys trying to do the right thing, but no just super unselfish guys who are just doing the right thing because that's the unselfish play, and that's what this team needs to win.
And Lightfoot will actually get better, I think, when you add these other guys, because when you slot another big next to him, he can just play minutes at the 4. Like he might be the one that'll be helped more than in any other. And I think that one thing that is, to go back to like panic level. Okay, let's say Billy Preston is clear next week and he's good to go. Are we sure that he's going to get like starter level minutes? Are we sure that he's going to play a big role? Because the whole one storyline we kind of talked about on this podcast before this season and coming into the season that we thought was going to play out was the tug back and forth between Billy Preston and Bill Self, and whether Billy Preston was going to play the way that Bill Self wanted him to play. And you've now had months of where, you would hope that would have been progressing because he would have been playing. And you can only get through so much to a guy in practice, like it's easier when there's the game film and you've got that. And, his growth almost has probably been stunted by this, obviously. And there's a chance that when he's eligible, it might still be hard for him to get minutes, even though they're there. Their minutes are clearly there. But who's to say, like, he's not going to spend some time in the doghouse? He very well could. And with De Sosa, he is coming along at a point where he is so far behind. And think back to a few years ago where Check Diallo, how hard it was for him to get minutes after he became eligible. And he'd been around there practicing the whole time. So now I know there's a more clear-cut path to minutes for those guys just because the numbers aren't there, but it's not going to be really, really easy to have them just step in and start getting minutes and producing and doing the things you want. Like, this is going to be a growing process, and that's another reason why the streak is seriously in jeopardy, because this team, maybe things start clicking in March and they start really figuring it out, but they're going to take some L's on the way there, and that's why I think there's probably more reason for panic about the streak than ever before, because it's really, really going to be a process.
And that brings up a good question, and it's one we bring up a lot, which is, I mean, look, the streak matters. If KU gets this one, it's an all-time record. It's something people will be talking about for a long, long, long time. It's never going to be matched again. Nobody is ever going to do this, what Kansas has done again. I mean, it's just the odds are too astronomical. But I also get your point, which is there's probably part of Bill Self sitting here thinking, I wish the streak didn't exist right now. Because think about his practices.
It's weighing on this guy.
Yeah, let's think about his practices in mid to late January. Let's say both those guys are cleared. You can think about this in one of two ways. You can think about this as, let's figure it out because Kansas is going to make the tournament. I mean, let's stop with NIT talk. Like, I'm sorry, KU is going to make the NCAA tournament. Now,
all they have to do is go like 8-10 in the Big 12 to make it.
They're in. I mean, I'm sorry, they're in. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, KU is in. So you're in the NCAA tournament. You're going to have to face tough teams no matter what. So you have two options basically here. You could completely get yourself ready for March, knowing that if you switch your offensive style, if you go more to two big lineups, if you really try to get Preston and DeSosa ready, if you completely kind of flip what your team has done defensively, your ceiling could be super high in March. Like, you could be as good as any of those other teams. Now, there's risk there. You could lose it all, too. I mean, you could be really bad at the end and have a horrible record and lose the Big 12 streak and have people thinking you're nuts. But at the same time, you could really play towards a really high ceiling in that point. Or you could try to win every single game, like Bill Self does in the Big 12 conference schedule. And when that happens, like you said, every time Billy Preston makes a mistake or Svi Mykhailiuk doesn't get in there and you limit their minutes, you kind of hamper their development and don't help yourself down the line. So it's a difficult thing. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't pretend to know the answer because there is a lot at stake. The Big 12 streak is amazing. It's unbelievable. It's something that is crazy. I mean, CJ, you guys wrote a book about it. Like, I mean, it's a big deal. But yet, at the same time, I could see the draw of wanting to try to get this team ready for March because it could be pretty darn good in March. It could be a formidable foe in March. It could be a team that makes the Final Four in March. So, again, I don't have the answers. I don't know what Bill Self is going to do, but it seems like this, like every other year, is going to be kind of one of those, you try to serve two masters the best you can. You try to win the Big 12. You try to develop those guys in practice. You try to win every game when you're out there, but yet try to get yourself as good as you can for March and not wear your guys completely down. It's a difficult thing to try to pull off, and that's why the Big 12 title streak is so amazing to begin with.
And the way they play, too, right now, like, there's going to be nights where they can beat anybody. Like, the way they played against Texas, the way they shot the ball, that performance can beat just about anybody in college basketball. And on the right nights, they'll look like that. Those nights are going to happen. But, you look around to the country at some other teams that kind of are built the similar way. And, Arizona State's built a lot like Kansas, right?
Yep.
Like, wouldn't you agree from watching Arizona State?
Yeah.
That's where Arizona State lost last night. They lost. I watched that whole game because I'm doing a story on Trey Holder this week, so of course they lost. But they, Colorado lost 6 of 8 coming into that game. But the reason they lost is they had one of their guys that's really, really important in Shannon Evans just totally bomb. He was not hitting anything. So that was huge. And then they just got killed on the boards, and they got killed for being small. Like, Colorado was just bigger than them. And when they weren't able to outscore Colorado, game pressure and having one of their guys get taken away, they end up losing the game at Colorado, who's not that good. And Florida just kicked the crap out of Texas A&M. And there's been nights this year where Florida just looks like a top 5 team, looks incredible. But there's also days where they lose to – they've got some bad losses. I don't have them in front of me, but did they lose to – was it Loyola, Chicago, something like that? And they've just got some really, really bad L's. And, those are two teams that are a lot like –
lost by 17 at home to Florida State is another one. So they've got 4 losses: Duke, Florida State at home, Loyola, Chicago at home, and then Clemson on neutral, but Clemson's been pretty good this year.
Clemson has been pretty good, but you don't know if Clemson's real or not. So, they've got some weird losses in there. So, that's just what you have out of Kansas. The margin for error is so much smaller than it usually is. And, another way to look at this, and it's really early to talk this way, but we should a little bit. Even Mike Krzyzewski has a dud every once in a while. Even Roy Williams has had a dud during this run. That's it almost makes it more incredible what Self's been able to do, just win so consistently in the regular season, year in and year out. Everybody's due a dud every once in a while. Sometimes the way you construct the roster and a guy leaving early when you're not expecting it, or just not hitting on a couple of different 13 years or whatever have you. There's the way college basketball is now with transfers and guys leaving early. It's so hard to hit every single year. And, Kentucky had that year where they went to the NIT. And, I'm not saying KU is going to go to the NIT. Like you said, I would say 95%, 97, 8, 9% chance they make the NCAA tournament.
Yep, that's low.
But they, so probably do a dud one of these years. Like the way the roster's constructed and going to be fit for next year, I think they could be really, really good again. And, that's not to write the season off, but I'm just saying, like, it's the panic's almost to another level just because of this streak and because, like, this just doesn't happen in Kansas.
Yeah, the home losses, I think, is what's most concerning. But
that's what's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just that you always hear the site stat, which we always just looked at and was like, how is that even possible? Bill Self has more Big 12 conference regular season titles than home losses. I mean, it's just things like that KU, when things got tough at home, would always grind out a victory however it happened, and this team hasn't been able to do that, and they haven't really been competitive in those two losses down the stretch, which is just so unlike a Bill Self team. And listen, I'm going to be that guy. I know that to me, the advanced stats are a crutch. I get it. Like, I'm Mr. Nerdy numbers guy. I rely on them a lot. I get all that. We're talking about the sky is falling, though, and I have to bring this up. I'm going to go through the 4 advanced statistical rankings I trust most, CJ. Okay, and this is after KU has lost. Now, the KU is 11-3 right now. We're talking sky is falling. You just talked about, hey, you're going to have a dud team every once in a while. This is wrong, that is wrong, this is wrong, that is wrong, all these sorts of things. Let me read you KU's ranking in these 4 measures, okay? Ken Pom, KU is 7th. Okay, not bad. Sagarin, KU is 6th. ESPN's BPI, KU is 5th. And then Torvik rankings, which are also well respected, had the best preseason rankings coming out before or for last season. KU 7th. And so part of me too is just looking at that and saying, okay, are we all just overreacting here? I mean, again, maybe KU won't win the Big 12, and that's because the Big 12 is pretty damn good this year. You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of good teams out there. Hell, Texas Tech might even win the Big 12. We don't know that yet. It certainly looks like a contender after that game against Kansas and how it's played so far. But part of me just wants to look at that and say, look, if Sagarin had KU at 24 or something, if one of those 4 did, I would say, okay, well, something's going on here. Something's wrong with Kansas. But if we go possession by possession, and if we look at the whole picture with this thing, none of these seem to have much of a concern for Kansas. And so part of me thinks that, okay, maybe the overreaction is like you said. It's just Bill Self has set this crazy high standard that KU should win every single game at home and should win the Big 12 every single year. And that's really tough to do, especially with a team, like you said. The three-point shooting has helped effective offense, but it's just a more volatile offense. It's going to be on one night, it's going to be off another, or it's going to be more threes made one night than another. And again, KU's biggest problem that we keep trying to tell people is the defense the last 2 games has just been awful. I mean, the defense has been at a level that can't be sustained moving on. But
they're the worst in the Big 12 in Big 12 games, right?
Yeah, they were going into a game. I think they're now 9th, but again, that's just not a Bill Self team. So part of me just thinks, listen, I look at these numbers, I look at them a lot. Kansas is an outlier here. Like, they're the team that doesn't seem like they belong on that line on all these places. So part of me thinks that maybe this is just a bit of an overreaction. KU might not win the Big 12, but they might not be that bad of a team either.
All right, I'll play the debunker.
Okay, go.
A lot of that is propped up on them kicking the crap out of teams that are just mediocre. And when they've had to play the high major teams and when they've been in game pressure situations, not to say every night, because the Texas game, they were in game pressure situations, but that was a day when they were feeling good because the jumpers were falling. But when they've gotten in game pressure in situations and they go through a stretch where the shots aren't falling, they're losing those games.
Well, and listen, CJ, I don't disagree with your point. I'm just saying overall, if you're ranked 7th in these or 6th or 5th, the overall quality of your team isn't bad. And we learned a lot from Texas Tech when they beat the crap out of really bad opponents. You know what I mean? Like, that's why they're 6th in Ken Pom. That's why they're up high in all these other rankings, is that on a per-possession basis, even against crappy competition, they beat some people pretty bad, and that tells you something about a team. So KU beating all those teams early, by a lot of points means something. Now, here's the argument I would make on the other side, which I'm sure you were probably going to get to, which is this KU defense was different early in the season than it is now because it looks like a worn-out team right now.
Yeah, and, like we've talked about, they need to play with a lot of energy. And to get to the rebounding point, like I meant to say this earlier, it's not to say this team is incapable of doing it because we have – I know it's a very, very, very small sample size, but we have – at least a one-game sample of when they played a team that should be awesome on the boards, and they limited them pretty well. You remember when that was?
Let's see. Good on the boards, played pretty well. Stanford, maybe?
No, Kentucky.
Oh, yes. Good call.
If you think back to that, like, okay, so I was at the Missouri scrimmage, and I came away from that thinking, I'm pretty sure we talked about this on the next pod, Jesse, that I thought they got creamed on the boards. I thought Missouri was just athletically and size-wise really gave them problems. And we came out of that scrimmage saying, man, this team could really, really struggle rebounding the ball. And I think Bill Self came away with that same takeaway. And I'm sure for the next couple of weeks after that, or at least week after that, they just hit the boards in practice, rebounding drill. I don't know this for a fact, but I bet they did. And in that Kentucky game, man, they really boxed out. Like, their box outs were on point. They really did a good job of keeping Kentucky's big guys, just using their butts and getting into people and, rebounding the ball.
I remember Svi Mykhailiuk. I wrote about this. He outjumped like a 6'11" player to get one of the most important defensive rebounds of the game. I remember that now that you're talking about it.
Yeah. So, like, they're capable of doing it. It just has to be a focus. Like, it really, really, really has to be a focus because they're not naturally good at it. But, a big part of the rebounding is just not just effort, but, like, effort focusing on the right things, like putting your butt into somebody and creating space for you to go get the ball. And I just don't think they're bringing that physicalness and that focus on doing that right now. They're just trying to go get the ball, and that doesn't work when you're small. Like, you have to use your body in the right way to get the rebounds, and they're just not doing that. But it's not to say that they can't. They just this has to be a team that is so engaged on the boards, so engaged on the offensive end by being really, really active, and by adding more pieces and having more depth and the guys not having to play as many minutes, that should help because, sometimes they do just look like a tired team.
I think this is coming, and I have no real evidence to prove this, but I think Bill Self's default setting when he gets a new player is to not play them until he trusts them. And I think that happened with Sam Cunliffe. And I think now that KU has lost, sometimes things change. You know what I mean? Like mindsets get shifted and altered a little bit. Like, Bill Self's going to do things the way he's always done them until there's a loss and there's a reason to change things up. And I think
Cunliffe played about as well as anybody the other night.
Yeah, he had a couple blow-bys where a guy blew by him off the dribble and scored, and he fouled one of them. I think the other guy got a layup. So there's still some issues there. But at the same time, I think Sam Cunliffe's going to get more run moving forward because I think if you look at it, Bill Self will push those problems to the back and let Devonta Graham play 40 minutes and all those sorts of things until losses come and until it's obvious that is not working. And then, he has been flexible. He has done different things. I think Sam Cunliffe's going to get a little bit more time because he can help with that. He can get Devontae to 37 or 38 minutes. He can get LaGerald Vick to 35 or 34. He can, sub Malik out of the game if he's not playing well, those sorts of things. So I think it's reached a point right now, especially without those two guys coming in, Billy Press and Sylvia DeSouza, that he's got to have more playing time because otherwise KU is not getting effectiveness on either end out of those other guys playing as dog-tired as they've been playing over the last few games.
And one guy we haven't even mentioned yet, and I know it sounds crazy, but this team has almost, and I've written a story about this, and hopefully someday it will run. The Athletics has been holding it. But it's crazy how, if you look at it, the games when Svi Mykhailiuk They shot the ball well. KU's been pretty darn good. And the games when he struggled shooting the ball, they haven't been very good. And he has become so important to whether this team is like having a good night or having an off night. Like, he's got to shoot the ball well and got to be playing with confidence because, early the Texas Tech game the other night, like, his shooting in the first half kind of kept him around. And you almost felt like, okay, maybe KU's going to make that run eventually because Svi, it's one of those nights where he's hitting, right? I kind of felt that early. I don't know. Did you have a similar kind of feeling at all?
Yeah, he was 3 for 3 to start, and at that point I think he was 60% on his three-pointers for the season at Allen Fieldhouse.
From Allen, yeah. And then after once he started missing shots, that's when the lead, just kind of got away from them. So he's, they need good Svi, man. They really, 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 really need good Svi because when he's hitting shots, I just feel like it makes it, it takes a little pressure off Devontae. It takes a little pressure off Vic. It takes a little pressure off everybody. And the roles kind of fit. Like, that's his role. He's got to make shots. And when he makes shots, it helps him do some other things too. So, that's one really, really important thing. I think on the nights when Svi's hitting, it's the nights where they look pretty good. So they need more consistency out of him.
And before we wrap up, I need him to have a couple of good games so that my story will finally run. Yeah,
you're gonna love it.
Yeah, it's been on hold for about a month. I think it was gonna go right. The Arizona State game kind of ruined it, right? Or Washington, one of those where
I wrote it the day before or the day of the Washington game. Maybe it was when I finished it, and it was supposed to run like the day after the Washington game, I think.
And then all of that happened.
Yeah.
Well, let me go on a mini rant before we wrap up, CJ. Just a mini 1-minute rant. I know, listen, I agree with all the points you make about three-point shooting, and it is more volatile. But, you see NBA teams go to it, and it's KU's most efficient way to score. And KU people complain about it a lot, but the bottom line is KU still has 3 different guys that are frequent three-point shooters making 44% of their threes. And I looked up Synergy's numbers. You're talking about Svi Mykhailiuk. He was 1.5 points per possession before the last game on guarded catch-and-shoot attempts. And so the guy is just a good guarded three-point shooter. And so, listen, it's the best way this team can play. And when you're talking about those three-pointers, I'm looking at the hoop math numbers and kind of comparing them to past years. KU isn't trading those semi-guarded threes for layups, because they're still getting about the same amount of shots at the rim. They're trading those for mid-range jumpers, which is the least efficient shot in basketball, plus they're not turning it over as often as years past. This is Bill Self's best turnover team if you look in the history of when he's been in charge of the program. So I get it. I understand why people have this mentality, and Bill Self has preached and kind of created some of it over time as well. But I'm just here to tell you, KU's offense is still pretty okay, and part of what made Texas Tech able to show the deficiency in KU's offense is Texas Tech is so good at getting back in transition, so good at getting back. And that's where KU gets so much of its points. When they play teams like that, it's going to look a little bit different. But I'm still telling you, in a half-court setting, a semi-guarded shot for Svi Mykhailiuk, that's an efficient shot. You just gotta hope that the numbers keep playing out over time and that he continues to make 44% of his threes. As long as that happens, I think KU's offense is going to remain successful over the big picture.
Yeah, this is, like I said earlier, this is who they are. I'm not saying they should stop shooting threes because it's who they are. They don't have like another gear. They don't have a changeup really. Their closest thing to a changeup is feeding Doak and letting him have, trying to go play through him as much as possible.
And
but their best offense is either him post up or somebody else shooting a three.
Yeah, and I will say, CJ,
that's who they are.
Texas Tech did a good job of, you talk about icing or downing ball screens, kind of trying to force the action to the sideline, made it tougher for KU on the perimeter. But, if you look at 2-pointers for KU in that game against Texas Tech, a game that KU loses by 12, KU is 19-29, 66%. And we talk about these guards can't drive and score inside. Well, Graham was 4 for 5, Svi was 1 for 2, Newman was 4 for 6. So, again, when teams are guarding them way out, there's been a little bit of a change-up that KU's been able to show. We saw the same thing against Oakland. Yeah, there's going to be an opening there. And that is all created because of the fear of the three-point shot. So I kind of reject the notion, KU does sort of have a change-up, and when it has to go to it when there's no help defense and teams aren't helping inside, then KU has shown a little bit of an ability to do that. But it's still in development stages, I get that, and we all know this. I mean, if KU makes 9 of 26 instead of 6 of 26 from 3, this looks like a different team. But again, you just kind of have to trust the numbers and trust it's going to play out over time, because over the course of the season, KU's been a great shooting team, especially at home.
All right, last point I'll make. We started with the you asked me the freak out meter or whatever, and I will make this point. Texas Tech, while that shouldn't happen at Allen Fieldhouse, yada yada yada. Like you said earlier, Texas Tech is pretty good, and part of it was their defense. And I had this in my story, which you can read on The Athletic. Please subscribe.
I've done it,
about
CJ.
Texas Tech.
I've done it. It's worth it. Go.
Good. Yeah. I looked up the stat that their defense is performing at a really, really high rate, and they're forcing turnovers. They're in the top 10 in forcing turnovers on KenPom, and they're in the top 10 in effective field goal percentage. Like, that's basically what defense is about. You want to try to take the ball away from the other team, and you want to try to limit them to a low shooting percentage. Like, they're doing both those things at a super elite level. And so I thought, man, like, it's really rare for teams to be really, really good in both those things, right? So I went back and looked and found how many teams have done that. And it was something like 5 in the history of KenPom, which goes back to 2002, right?
Yeah, 2001, 2002.
So it was like 5 teams. And only one of those teams, 2014 Louisville, the year after they won the title. Only one of those teams was from a major conference So only one Power 5 team has ever done that in the last 17 years in college basketball. So, like, you were going up against we don't know that Tech will maintain those numbers, but there's quite a bit of evidence that says that's a really, really elite defense. So, that should make maybe KU fans feel hopefully a little bit better that, if this isn't your dad's Texas Tech or even the Texas Tech that we've always known. This is a different level of Texas Tech. So that's the last thing I want to say.
I think that's the biggest issue for this loss for KU fans was the name is Texas Tech, honestly. If this was Oklahoma and it happened, I think it'd be a little bit lower. But Texas Tech, to me, probably the favorite right now to win the Big 12, or at least get a share of it. So we'll see how things play out.
That's what the numbers say, so of course that's what you say, right?
Well, I mean, that's you know me. Listen, that's all I know what the numbers say. But
hey, I made that point in my story, so
But if you start out with a nice win over Baylor and then a victory at KU, doesn't that put you in a good spot? Hey, remember, CJ, how many?
What they've done against good teams. They kicked the crap out of Northwestern. I know Northwestern's been a little bit of a disappointment, but they're still, they still might be a tournament team. So
how many teams have swept Bill Self in the regular season? How many Big 12 teams have swept? How many Big 12 teams have swept Bill Self in the regular season?
Ooh, man, probably 0.
0. And now Texas Tech is going to get a home game against Kansas where it's favored. That's a good reason to pick them to win the league, don't you think?
Yeah, they're off to a good start. Although it seems like every time, it doesn't just seem like it has happened. Every time somebody has snuck one at Allen, he gets his payback.
Yep, that'll be important. That'll be a huge game for Kansas. But that one's down the line. KU gets TCU on Saturday. We'll see how the Jayhawks bounce back from that loss against Texas Tech. For CJ, this is Jesse. We're going to sign off for the Sports BKC podcast. Be sure to tune in for another episode next week.
SeatGeek is the easiest way to find the best deals on tickets to pretty much any live event. Concerts, sports, theater, comedy, whatever you want. Download the SeatGeek app today and enter promo code SEATS to save $20 on your first purchase.